Welcome to The Explainer. Right out of the gate today, we're looking at an incredibly unsettling question. What happens when a city's absolute worst nightmare, a deadly mass casualty event, is carried out by a man who was already the subject of an intense police manhunt? Today, we are breaking down the devastating events of June 12, 2026 in Midland, Texas. We're going to look at the immediate emergency, the tactical response, and most importantly, that critical 48-hour gap between when the suspect first fired at police and when he ultimately shattered a community. Okay, here's how we're going to break this down. We're covering terror on West Wall Street, the critical 48-hour gap, standoff at the clinic, victims and community trauma, and finally, seeking answers. Let's get right into it. Section 1. Terror on West Wall Street, June 12, 2026. Picture this. It's just a normal Friday morning on a busy commercial strip in Midland, Texas. Auto shops, hotels, people just going about their day. But right around 8:03 a.m., that routine was violently shattered. To really grasp the sheer chaos of what happened, we need to listen to the people who were actually there. One verified bystander described it as, quote, a hail of gunfire, too many shots fired to even count. People were stepping outside thinking they were just going to see a car crash, only to realize they're walking right into an active shooter situation. And we're talking a lot of gunfire. Another witness, working near an abandoned veterinary clinic, reported hearing a staggering amount of shots, at least 40 rounds, just fired off in rapid succession. Literally dozens of law enforcement vehicles, armored trucks, and officers suddenly descended on the 4600 block of West Wall Street. At that point, the scale of this thing was undeniable. This wasn't some contained dispute. It was a full-blown, citywide emergency happening right there in broad daylight. Section 2. The critical 48-hour gap. A wanted man. Now, as the dust started to settle, a massive and honestly difficult revelation came to light. The suspect, 45-year-old Victor Villarreal from nearby Odessa, well, he wasn't exactly a stranger to local police. In fact, he was already a wanted man. Let's rewind to Wednesday night, June 10th. At 11:23 p.m., a Midland police officer tries to make a routine traffic stop. Villarreal takes off, stops his car, actually opens fire on the officer with a rifle, and then manages to escape. That kicks off an attempted capital murder charge and a massive public manhunt on Thursday. But the guy was still out there, mobile. By 8:03 a.m. on Friday, what started as an isolated officer-involved shooting had spiraled into a mass casualty event. And that gap, that window between those two dates, that is the absolute hinge of this whole story. And this wasn't Villarreal's first brush with the law either. Looking objectively at his documented criminal history, it spans over 2 decades. Back in 2003 and 2004, he faced unlawful weapon charges that were dismissed as part of a plea deal. Then, in 2008, a domestic violence charge ended in a no-contest plea and was later dismissed. And finally, in 2009, a conviction for unlawfully carrying a firearm. So, without passing any judgment here, we're just looking at a long, documented pattern of weapons-related encounters with the legal system. Moving on to Section 3, standoff at the clinic, the tactical response. Okay, so back to Friday morning. As police are returning fire, the suspect retreats and barricades himself inside this highly fortified, abandoned building known as the Tull City Veterinary Hospital. So how do law enforcement handle a fortified position like that? Let's break down the exact tactical steps taken by the Midland Police and the Texas DPS. Number 1, they immediately locked down a hard perimeter. They had to contain the threat. And get this, during that initial barrage of bullets, several officers were actually pinned down and had to be rescued using an armored police vehicle. Pretty intense stuff. Then, number 2, to avoid sending cops right into a lethal funnel, they brought in the tech. They deployed unmanned aerial drones and bomb squad robots to visually clear the building. This standoff went on for hours, completely shutting down the entire commercial corridor. Finally, at 12:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, those drones and robots confirmed the suspect had died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound right there inside the clinic. That officially brought the immediate threat to an end. And importantly, no law enforcement officers were injured during that final shootout. Section 4. Victims and community trauma. The community impact. With the immediate danger neutralized, the reality of the human toll really began to set in. Because, look, in a city the size of Midland, the ripples of violence like this spread incredibly fast. Tragically, the attack claimed the life of 62-year-old Edward Randall Scott. He was a dedicated city employee, a fixture in the local softball community. Just heartbreaking. On top of that, 10 other people were injured. The strain on the local healthcare system was immediate and massive. 9 victims were rushed to Midland Memorial Hospital, all in a single wave, with 4 of them needing emergency, life-saving surgery. So we're not just talking about a crime scene anymore. This was a mass trauma event unfolding in real time. But amidst all that chaos, the community actually had a system in place to try and protect itself. If you were in a specific geographic radius, you got something called a Lila alert pushed right to your phone telling you to stay put. This is a geo-targeted text system implemented back in 2021. In the name, it's named after Lila Hernandez, a victim of the horrific 2019 Midland, Odessa mass shooting. It's just a stark, direct connection between the protective measures they're using today and the tragic history this region has unfortunately already endured. And you can totally imagine why the lingering memory of that 2019 tragedy made Friday's events feel so incredibly terrifying for residents. It brings it all back. But tactically speaking, the two events were actually quite different. See, the 2019 incident was highly mobile, a gunman firing seemingly at random all across two cities. But the 2026 shooting, as devastating as it was, very quickly turned into a localized, static barricade situation right after the police first engaged. Having that context is absolutely crucial for understanding how authorities managed to hold the perimeter and keep the threat contained to just that single block. Finally, Section 5, Seeking Answers, the Investigation. So the barricades are down, the roads are back open, and the community has gathered for vigils at Centennial Park. But honestly, the search for accountability, that's really just getting started. The immediate danger is gone, sure, but now state investigators are meticulously picking apart the timeline. At the request of the Midland Police, the Texas Rangers, alongside the FBI, are running an active investigation to piece together exactly what happened. They're looking at everything: forensics, tactics, suspect movements, ballistics. They absolutely have to understand the operational decisions that were made during that highly critical window between Wednesday night and Friday morning. And that brings us to the big question. It's a provocative thought, and it's one that local journalists and residents are asking right now. Was the public warning system actually matched to the true level of danger during that 48-hour search gap? Look, a community understands that not every police search wraps up neatly in an hour, but when a guy tied to the attempted murder of a cop just pops back up 2 days later and causes 11 casualties, well, it really forces us to take a hard look at the balance between running an ongoing police manhunt and urgently containing the community. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. We'll be keeping a close eye on the facts as they continue to emerge.